Hello, and welcome to the E-commerce Leader Series, the podcast dedicated to helping founders and senior leaders navigate the future of online retail with AI. I'm your host, Bryan Kinghorn, Head of Growth here at Luca. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Craig Klein, who is the President and CEO at SalesNexus. So, Craig, thank you very much for being here. Before we dive into our main topics of conversation, would you please give our listeners an introduction to yourself, your background, and what your business does?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you, Bryan. Thanks for having me on. It's exciting to be here. A short version of my story is I was an electrical engineer in college. Did that for like a year out of school, but man, I just couldn't handle sitting at a desk all day. So I decided to get into sales and brought some engineering, analytical skills to the profession of selling and did well and rose up through the ranks, ended up leading sales teams in the energy business here in Houston. Okay. And, I was a user of things like CRMs and things. And long story short, the company I was last working for had a liquidity event, and I had a little bit of a windfall as a result of that. And so I decided, you know what, I'm going to build a better mousetrap. So we built the first online version of Act, which was like the old software for salespeople way back in the day. And this was 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And then since then, SalesNexus has evolved, and we've added all kinds of marketing automation capabilities. And now we work with B2B sales teams, and we also work with e-commerce brands and nonprofits and all kinds of companies.
Yeah, nice one. And when did you start the business?
2002.
2002. And what was that initial sort of, I know you said you obviously had a liquidity event, but what was the gap that you identified at that time that allowed you to start the business?
Well, believe it or not, that was so far back in history that Salesforce was brand new at that time. Like the cloud computing concept, that was new and different, right? And so that was part of it, right? But this is, somewhat interesting story. Our first real big failure and then pivot was our original vision was to build a mobile experience so that outside salesperson didn't have to be sitting at the computer, right?
Yeah.
To use the CRM. And of course, back then, this is pre-iPhone, even pre-BlackBerry. So we spent all kinds of money and time building apps for back then what was called the Palm Treo, which was one of the first, organizer, PDA, telephone type of things, mobile phone, pre-iPhone. We built apps for that device because it was the market leader at the time, but it was very early days. About the time we were starting to get through the beta testing and we were close to releasing a product for the mobile, that's when the iPhone was released. And all that effort we had put into developing for the one platform just was worthless all of a sudden because the iPhone took over everything. And back then you couldn't just quickly port your code from one device to another. So we kind of had to pivot the whole business model.
Yeah. Well, I definitely understand where you're coming from. So my family business back home in Scotland is actually a home improvement business. And so I was involved in the family business for quite a number of years until I decided that I wanted to go and do my own thing. But anyway, I won't go into too much detail on that. But one of our things, we had lots of sales representatives in the field. And one of our challenges back then, this would have been slightly later than 2002, but yeah, late 2000s, early 2010s was exactly that, getting these sales guys with the same sort of CRM system as what they would have had in the office. So yeah, it's a similar issue that we had. Ultimately, did come up with a solution, but totally understand where you're coming from.
Yeah, it remains the number one challenge, right? In fact, what I've seen about Luca is that that's really the ingenious invention that you guys have is that you're not requiring everything to be inside of Luca in order for it to do its magic. You can connect to all the 10 different systems that a business might be using. And that's kind of, I think, the smart approach, because people are one part of it. We have to get the data in about what happens in a personal interaction. But then there's, my accounting system and my shipping system and my website and everything else as well.
Yeah. And it gets to a point there's actually too much data. There's too much data out there that us as humans, our brains can't comprehend all the data that's out there. And sometimes not even sometimes, many a time, I do it myself, is you just need to ask a simple question to find out a simple answer. And rather than having to pull all these different reports or look at different dashboards, you can literally ask Luca the question and it'll give you an answer, and it can give you an answer as detailed or as simple as you wish. And I think that is what's missing from the myriad of different data points that we've got out there, and obviously that's what we're trying to solve. So so it's a problem that goes back obviously 24 years at least anyway, to when you started.
Yeah, and in any business where you're having a human to human interaction, right? In today's world, there's so many different media that you may interact with your customer through, right? Like, might be on the phone, might be in a meeting, might be an email, could be a text message, might be Instagram direct messages, and how do you bring all that together so you have one view of the relationship with the customer? That's a big challenge.
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. So as the business has grown, then obviously you've got 24 years of history. What's some of the products you do now? Like, tell us exactly what it is that you offer to businesses now, and how has that evolved over the years?
Sure. So like a good example client would be some of our customers that are in the sort of the wellness space. They manufacture supplements, health aids, digestive supplements, things like that. And so they sell both e-commerce on their website and direct to consumer, but also they sell through distributors. So they have these sort of two faces of the business. There's the direct to consumer side, and then there's the more B2B side, right? And so our solution's a great solution for businesses like that, because we can automate the e-commerce side of things.
Yeah.
But also our system's designed to really enable those customer facing reps to do their job and focus on the human relationship and not get distracted by the technology, but make sure that all the information that they're gathering is automatically going into the system, so that when I hang up the phone with you and I've taken your order, or I've solved your problem, or whatever it is, the right follow-up message is automatically going to you without me having to, spend a lot of time figuring it out.
Yeah, cool. And obviously on your website, it clearly states, that you are AI powered. So, the business is clearly AI powered. So obviously this is an AI conversation in the main, although we obviously like to talk about more things. So, based on that statement, it's clearly AI is a big part of, your business offering. But sort of separate from that, would you just explain, how your personal use, and by personal, I mean even like how it helps you run the business side of things. So, what is your usage of AI? How does that look like? Separate, from the actual product offering that you give as a business.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, we're a relatively small player in a very, very big market. And so we've always had to do things kind of, the hard way, if you will, on our own, right? Hacking our way into solutions a lot of times. And so AI just has, for a couple of years now, been just a great aid in that process, right? So whether it's, hey, we need a new landing page on the website for this new promotion, ask ChatGPT and here we go, right? We're ready to roll. We've started using it for video as well, with mixed success, we use it a lot to help customers with their problems. In other words, a lot of our customers, our tool can automate things very well for them, but it's like having a gun with no bullets in it. They have to decide what the messages are, right, that they want to send to their customers. And that's tough for a lot of small businesses, especially where they don't have a lot of marketing talent on the team. So we can use an AI to quickly flesh out, some draft messages. And that it's so much easier for the customer than to go in with a starting place and just make adjustments rather than starting with a blank piece of paper, so to speak. So those are some examples. I mean, personal life, I would say mostly I'm a big history buff, and, I've gotten to be annoying to all my friends and family in the way that I can use AI now to go way too deep into a subject and share all that at dinner. But in fact, I've even every now and then I get to thinking about, I need to just I'd love to have an AI history teacher, where you can just ask a historical type question and it can pull together all the resources of, some people are visual learners, some people want to read it, some people want to hear it. To be able to pull all that together and synthesize it for the listener or the viewer, I think would be really powerful. I certainly would use the heck out of that.
Yeah, that definitely sounds like something you could potentially build in Claude. So I think you should take a time to get it done at some point. So I suppose then on the business side, then how, we've spoken about data and all the data that's out there available to us, and it can be a challenge to understand it all. How are you, making some of these critical decisions that you need to make as a leader of the business, on a day-to-day basis, and how does AI play a part in some of that decision-making process, if at all?
Sure. Well, I think the first answer to that question is it's a great way to benchmark things, right?
Yep.
Like you can very quickly ask, how are other people in my industry doing this or that, or what are the metrics that people usually measure, and what are the benchmarks of those metrics? And then you quickly know, am I doing okay here, doing really well, or am I way behind? That to me is so powerful, because a lot of times, when you're in, you're running a small business, you got 100 different things that you could spend your time on, and they all seem like they probably are worthwhile. But how do you prioritize and know which one's the one lever that's really going to make a difference? And I think sometimes that just having that information of benchmarking yourself lets you know, okay, I'm already doing pretty well here. Maybe I can spend a lot of time and get an extra 2% out of that, but maybe that's not the lever I'm looking for. I want to go work over here where I'm way behind my peers and have a lot more room for growth,
Yeah, nice. And so I suppose in a similar vein to that, so obviously you've had 24 years worth of history. I'm sure it hasn't been a totally easy path over those 24 years. Many challenges arise, and I think that's sometimes the best value is in the conversations around some of the difficult times in business, or some of the challenges or failures that we've had throughout those period of time. So talk to us about any of the challenges you've had over recent years, and give me an example of one that you've potentially overcome.
What do they say? There's a phrase that I'm grasping for right now. Business would be easy if it wasn't for the people.
Yes.
And that's true, because people are hard, right? Everybody's unique and has their own goals and desires, and some people are kind of hard to get to know. Some people, you get to know them way too fast, and you have to build a team out of this very diverse tapestry of humanity, right? And so to me, that's been the greatest sort of learning curve of my entire arc of my career, it started for me as a salesperson, right? To be good in sales, you really have to learn to understand people. So when we started SalesNexus, obviously I brought that initial skill to the table, but it's different, of course, with employees. Now today, where you have everyone's talking about, okay, we're going to automate this, we're going to automate that with AI, and we won't need people anymore, right? For the, maybe not 100%, but a lot of the roles we could sort of automate. My approach now is that for SalesNexus as a business, but also just for me as a human being, the magic, the fun of being in business is the people.
Yeah.
It's not the money. That's why that phrase, I think, carries so much weight for me, because it draws the line. At the end of the day, it's really just math. Do this, charge that, get that.
Yeah.
But it's the people that make it interesting. And so, like I say, for SalesNexus, our niche that we're going after now is not the company that wants to automate their way out of ever talking to their customers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But what we want to do is help companies be sure that when they do invest the resources in building a one-on-one relationship with a customer, that they can do that really well. They can be at the right place at the right time and have all the information they need to have a great, engaging conversation, and then make the most of it when it's over.
Yeah, cool. So on that team point then, and employees, so obviously that you've grown team over the years. So first question is like, what does that team look like now? Like, how many people are there, and do you think that, or have any of these the new developments in AI, helped you keep headcount maybe slightly leaner than you may have been otherwise?
Yeah, I mean, well, to answer the first question, let's see, we're around 10 people now. About half technical and half customer facing, sales and support. I think the answer to the second question is, yeah, for sure. I mean, we're all along, I think we've done really well versus our competitors at being very proactive in engaging with our customers, helping them get started with the system, helping them use it. Our support's always been, the best in the business. And that's just by intention. But throughout that, there's no way we could have afforded to do that if we didn't find ways to automate it and get efficient about it, right? And now, we've leveraged a few years ago. I'm not exactly sure how long ago, but before AI was cool, we were using chat bots that we're learning from all of our chat conversations with the customers. But we also learned really quickly that that's only going to go so far. You have to have a human that can jump in there and take over no matter what. It doesn't matter how good your AI is,
Yeah.
Now we're working on tools that allow, you can connect Claude or whatever AI you want to our system or use it as an orchestration tool. So you just tell it, I want my CRM to manage this, and I want it to have a nurture sequence that looks like this. And here's the landing page that we're going to collect leads or orders from or whatever. And then our system just builds it all for you. So what that does for us as a business, obviously it's a good customer experience, but also that's the kind of work that a lot of times our team would have to get involved in doing for the customer. And so now we're sort of automating our way out of that.
Yeah, cool. And how does the AI adoption look across the entire team? Is everyone on board with AI? Is there still some reluctance in any departments? Or how does that look?
It's a mixed bag, of course. Being in the business that we're in, everybody is pretty conversant with the capabilities and open to trying new things and new approaches and things like that. But, there's what I see is that there's some people that, left to their own devices, they would spend the next 3 days building their own app to do something, right?
Yeah.
And others that, they're not going to do that. But if you hand them an app that has been built and is ready for the real world, they're happy to use it,
Yeah. Okay. No, nice. Awesome. And so looking ahead to the business continuing to flourish, how do you, well, firstly, like just purely, business level, where do you see the business being in, say, 3 years? And I know things are changing much faster than that these days, so it's hard to look too far ahead, especially with the use of AI and things. But yeah, where do you see the business going in that period of time? And how do you see AI playing even more of a part in your business than it currently already is?
Well, I mean, it's going to be a bigger and bigger part of our product, first of all. There's no two ways about that. Where I see it going from a product point of view is that our system will be, our AI in the product will be a sort of CSO, CRO, CMO, all of those in a box,
Yeah.
because in the CRM, we have all this data about who are their customers, what's their engagement level, what are they spending, what are they buying, all of those things. Our AI can look at that data for your business individually. And like we talked about earlier, in seconds, benchmark you against your competition and come back and give you a roadmap and say, here are 3 areas where you're underperforming the competition. And here's, some steps to take to close that gap. Right. So I'm really excited about that. I just feel like that's going to be super fun to play with. We see that leading to the creation of kind of a partner network, so that when we're pointing you down that road to close a certain gap or capitalize on a certain opportunity, and you don't have the experience or the expertise that it takes to really get all the way there, that we'll have partners that will jump in and help you out. And, our AI will be part of the handoff process, right?
Yeah.
So that's going to be really exciting. I think, again, as a smaller business, where we've always been short sort of staff wise or expertise wise, is kind of on the back office and sort of financial management side of things. We're adding some features into our tool along those lines, but like in terms of payment processing and things like that. I want to have an AI agent myself. That's my CFO.
Yeah. Amazing. Well, I mean, it's all been incredibly interesting conversation. And before I begin sort of wrapping up, I love it when someone comes on, they've got a bookshelf behind them. So a little fun one for a second. What would be your recommendation of the best sort of business book that you've read?
Man, that's a great question, because there's so many. Well, let's see. One that for sure is on the top of the list is it's called The Greatest Salesman in the World by Og Mandino.
Okay.
And it's, written as really just a book for a new salesperson type of thing, right? But it's not overtly religious, but it's very spiritual in the approach that it takes. And that's what I love about it, is it's not so much about, the mechanics of, you got to make this many calls and here's what to say when you get the person on the phone. It's more about, how do you really put the needs of your customer, first. And if you just let that guide you, then success will come, So that's a great book. It's also a very short read. And another one, I can't remember the name of the author off the top of my head, but it's called The Goal.
Okay.
It was written at least 20, 30 years ago, but, very much about optimizing process. It's really it's sort of fictional. It tells the story of this guy who takes over this plant and has to figure out how to keep it from going bankrupt because they're just not making money anymore. And how he goes through the place and just figures out how to optimize every single process to get the place turned around. And so it's really fascinating, just a good read too.
Yeah, no, thanks for sharing. It's always good to know what other people have read, and it's beneficial. So yeah, incredibly interesting conversation. Thanks very much, Craig. So again, before we wrap up completely, where is the best place for our listeners to find you or follow along on the journey?
Sure. Yeah. Well, salesnexus.com. That's the website. And then, of course, that's also the handle on most of our social media.
Cool.
So we're doing a lot of webinars and educational things for, people that are needing to maintain a human relationship with their customers. This year, we've already done 5 webinars specifically on, how to create a process that makes sure that nobody slips through the cracks.
Okay. Nice one. Okay, perfect. We'll put all that in the show notes as well. Well, Craig, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you on the podcast today. Thanks very much for your time. And listeners, we'll speak to you next time.
Yeah, thank you, Bryan. It's been fun.